It's a witch! Hang her! Welcome back, patrons, to the realm of old-timey Salem, Massachusetts. I am your co-artistic producer, Mackenzie, and I'm joined once again by our wonderful panel of Crucibles and Cruciblers, in the case of Ryan and I. And we are here to be discussing another adaptation of The Crucible, because our last one with the wonderfully miscast Daniel Day-Lewis did so well that we felt we had to come back and go back into the realm of Salem again and go back into the realm of Arthur Miller. And so this time we're doing NT Live's The Crucible, this version starring Erin Doherty from 2023, even though there was a later version of this production that starred Millie Alcock from House of the Dragon, but they filmed the Erin Doherty version, who was from The Crown, played Princess Anne in seasons 3 and 4 and kind of had her breakout performance in that. But yes, we're talking about NT Live's The Crucible, directed by Lyndsey Turner. And it starred, as we said, Erin Doherty as, what's her name? Abigail Adams. And
Williams.
then it also, Abigail Williams. And then it also had Brendan Cowell as John Proctor. So there we go. And this production ran sometime in 2023. We got different changing dates of when people came in, so we'll just say 2023 to be on the safe side. But it's now an NT Live at home, so go on and check it out. And joining us, we have a terrific panel. First off, we have the wonderful Sarah Heim returning to us. Hello again, Sarah. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you. So good to be here to talk about The Crucible again. I'm so excited.
You couldn't get enough of us the last time. You had to come back.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then what's in your cup today?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So today I have some herbal tea that I put in this, my largest, most cauldron-like mug.
Beautiful. Is there a frog in that mug?
No. Thankfully, no. There will be no summoning of the devil here, sir.
You're just sipping your tea from your crucible. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And then, of course, we have the wonderful Jillian Robinson. Hello, Jill, our associate artistic producer.
Yes. Hello, Mac. How are you?
Welcome. I am good. What's in your cup today? What's your ensemble?
So it's funny that you did call us Crucibles, Mac, because now my mug's going to make sense times 2. Ooh. So like Martha Corey, I'm drinking out of a Bell mug, who is also a woman who reads.
Yes.
But you did just call us Crucibles. So
I did call you Crucibles.
Amazing. And then, so yeah, I've got some just black coffee that's just going,
black like your soul.
Soil of the earth.
Yeah.
And then I've got some water in this like mason jar. I thought I would be a little bit maybe period specific. And did they drink out of mason jars in 1600s in Salem? Who knows?
Probably used them. I don't know if they drank out of them.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you know what?
Preserves in there.
We're breaking some rules and we're drinking. We'll pretend this is brine. Okay. Anyways, my ensemble, it's very subtle, but I am wearing like a light pink because I noticed a lot of the chorus members in this kind of don baby pink hues. So that's my ensemble. And that's that.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have our Crucibler, our wonderful co-artistic producer, Ryan Borochovitz. Hello, Ryan.
Hello. Happy to be representing the Cruciblers.
Yes. Yes. Welcome.
Yeah, good to be here. Happy to dive back into this play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Your favorite Arthur Miller play you told us last time.
I'm pretty sure I said that it's not last time.
You have to go back and listen to find out.
Yeah, I did actually make a point of re-listening to that other episode to remind myself what we talked about in the preparation for this one, and I distinctly recall saying that I like All My Sons better than The Crucible.
Ryan, don't spoil. We're trying to get people to go back to that episode.
If to find out what my favorite Arthur Miller play is the only reason that they would go to listen to that episode, then they can have it. I'm happy to give them that little nugget. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Very good. And what's in your cup?
So, riffing off of Jill's funny Beauty and the Beast cup, she called dibs on the one with the scandalous woman who reads, but we also have this little guy, Chip, who, you might recall, is brought to life by a witch or enchantress's magic.
That is true.
So, seemed fitting.
Very nice.
Well, hold on. Chip is transformed into the teacup. He already is alive.
Okay, true. Yes, I misspoke. Thank you for correcting that. So people
he is cursed to be a teacup.
Yes, okay, a witch or enchantress turned a normal little boy into a teacup, and they can do the same to you if you don't try and execute them.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. Yes. Yes. And today I am drinking some crystallite from my silver tankard. Once again, I feel on brand for this play with tankards and mugs, all that good stuff. And of course, I don't know. Once again, the pastel-y purple colors I felt were very much in line with the costuming today. So I was like, perfect. I wore that to the office and I came right home and threw this on and I was like,
amazing.
Perfect. We're in color coordination mode.
Nice.
Now, like every adaptation of the Crucible, this is a big cast show. There's lots of people involved, even some miscast people like Daniel Day-Lewis. But this time not. This time we had a pretty solid cast of characters being represented on stage. So, Sarah, who was your cast shout out for this episode?
Okay, yeah, I had a few who stood out to me. Mary Warren, who was played by Rochelle Diedrichs. I'm nailing that last name.
It's okay. Anyone's names if you mispronounce, apologies in advance.
Apologies in advance.
No worries.
But I thought she was really good. She really stood out to me as finding the heightened theatricality, that the energy that was brought by the whole cast, but still making it very believable and authentic, and managed to find that balance of the innocence, like the naivete of the character. So she really stood out. And there was a bunch of people that I can't shout out them all. I'll leave some for
it's so
everyone.
hard not to.
I know. But I actually really liked Elizabeth Proctor as well, who was played by Eileen Walsh. She also, I felt she just had a real authenticity to her performance, and I felt like made it very her own. In some of her choices and the way she said things, or even her mannerisms, just felt very true to her, which felt really, really authentic. And I kind of am highlighting the authenticity, I think, because there was some, I'm so sorry. There was some performances that I felt were not so authentic and that took me out. And it was characters like this that I felt really, both of these actors really found the balance of like, this is theatrical, this is heightened, but also it's true to you as the character. And then I also, for the same reason, want to shout out the Reverend Hale. And I can't see who.
I got his name here. Fizayo Akade.
Yes. Yeah. Again, for me, especially, he was really grounding in those scenes where we've got a million people on stage yelling at one another in those heightened group scenes. He managed to really find, to be very, again, activated and stressed and heightened, but again, very grounded. And I really felt him where some people did not in those scenes. I felt him making discoveries in the moment, thinking the thoughts of the character and listening and then trying to impact the people around him, again, in a way that I didn't always notice from everybody in those crowd scenes. And so I really found him to be like, my eye kept going to him in those scenes. So those would be my main 3 shout outs.
I'm happy to piggyback off of that because Fizayo Akade as Hale also got my top shout out. I thought he was really excellent in this. And for all the same reasons that you've just said. And he's had such a presence and he really is. I think we talked about this a bit last time too, but the character who goes through the most interesting arc, or certainly among them in this piece.
He's underrated.
Really, and I wouldn't even say he's underrated because I think like a lot of people, if you know the play well, you do kind of recognize that yes, this is one of the main characters to follow. But you really do need to get a strong actor to really convey his importance. I guess he's easy to fall into the background if you get someone a little more forgettable, but he stole every scene that he was in, so he definitely deserves my shout out. And just one more backup shout out that I will give, who I would be curious if anyone else was going to say him too, but our Thomas Putnam, who isn't in it much. The actor's name is Alistair Parker.
Yes.
Just like an interesting presence. I liked his beard a lot. That's not the reason why I'm shouting it out. But it is a character who I kind of remembered being in it more than he is. And I think maybe the movie being our more recent exposure with the Ferris Bueller principle kind of is the reason why I maybe think that he stands out more. But I thought he had a very commanding presence, and he sort of was an interesting, more stoic counterpart foil to Reverend Paris. That he, whereas Paris in this production, whose performance I also liked, but I suspect someone else might shout him out too. Okay, so I will save that. But while he was a little squirrelier and all over the map, anytime that he was in a scene with Putnam was the one holding it down and really gave the sense that even though he's not in it much, that he's controlling the situation just as much, if not more, than you might think he is. So I really did appreciate his performance a lot.
He was the man behind the curtain, in very reflective, like, U.S. politics today, where, you have the person on the pulpit who's preaching, but then you got the guy in behind who goes, don't worry, I'll back you up in the community. I'll spread the good word. You just, say what needs to be said, and I'll just,
as
get
long
my
as you
land that I want.
Keep benefiting my economic interests, so we'll be okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Scary character, Thomas Putnam. Jill,
I guess I can piggyback off that.
I saw you making reference to Ryan when he mentioned a certain character.
Because I'll take the Reverend Samuel Paris sort of piggyback, because that character and then another character I will mention in a moment. But yeah, I thought, actually I'll mention it now. So Reverend Samuel Paris, played by Nick Fletcher, and then our Giles Corey, played by Carl Johnson. So both of these roles to me are interesting with this show. Like, they're so vital to the plot, but like they're smaller characters. But I just feel like they both are like staunch figures in both sides of the coin. Like Giles being like the oldest person in a community. Literally, it's a lot of moments like he's in weighted moments, and then ironically he dies by being pressed. And and like my heart breaks for Giles anytime I watch or read this. And like this character, I will always.
The minute he mentions his wife, you just go, "Oh, buddy, don't say it."
And then with Reverend Samuel Paris, I think, like, again, he's like the catalyst of like the religious side of this, right? Like, he's the one that kind of gets this whole thing going, and constantly these characters kind of weave in and out. So I just want to shout out, Nick Fletcher, who played Paris, and Carl Johnson, who played Corey, because I think, again, like, you have to have super strong, grounded actors to play, like Ryan was saying and Paris is saying, these flitty moments, or as with Giles Corey, like these confused sort of like drowning bits. But then also, again, with Giles Corey, like there's the humor there that I really love. Like Carl Johnson really allowed there to be a little bit of brevity in this story. So it's interesting. I wasn't planning on talking about those characters together, but look at that. I did, and that was really cool. And then I do just want to do, just to kind of tag off of Sarah too, Mary Warren, played by Rochelle Deirdricks. Yeah, I just think like she had such an awesome grasp of what her Mary was, and like visceral emotional reactions to things, and sometimes even just her active listening and like the emotion quivering through her body. I was like, that's a really strong Mary take. So Mac, how about you?
I got a few, Jill, but first I will piggyback on you and say Nick Fletcher was one of mine, because Samuel Paris can be played so many ways, but to choose to play him like a spineless smarmy worm of a human being who is just at it for the money and is just so smarmy and yet filled with fear, is so insecure that you understand why this happens to him and why he's so corruptible in the way that he falls in this show, is perfect. And just the frothing at the mouth almost at the end of I am ruined. It's almost like him doing the my ducats, my jewels. It's like he doesn't really care about the fact that it was what's her name? Not Mary Warren. Abigail has left. It's she broke into my lockbox and took 30 plus pounds of money. I'm ruined. My salary is gone. And he's so petty. Like just the whole thing of I have still not received my firewood. You have a salary to pay for that, but I shouldn't have to pay for it. It's like, oh, you smarmy asshole. It's great. But Ryan and I had a big debate last episode about Paul Schofield as Judge Danforth. Matthew Marsh as our Judge Danforth did it right, where he had the right energy. Like there were parts, like I talked about last time, it was all about controlling the pace of the dialogue. Like Paul Schofield just dragged every line through molasses to the point where every bit of urgency was gone. And maybe it was also because the way Paul Scofield just didn't move much on set. Like, even watching Matthew Marsh right before they bring in, what's her name? Elizabeth. And he's doing the, okay, turn your backs. And in fact, he's moves and it's almost sharp. It's just that spin. And he's got the cloak about him and he's moving all the time. And he's just pacing like a tiger. And he's just lashing at one moment and then back the next. Like, there's the moment of him arguing, well, only two people will know who's a witch, and it's the victim and the witch. And the witch is not going to, confess stuff. And just the fact you can see his brain moving so quickly that it's like, I don't agree with what you're arguing, but this is how lawyers work today. Like, I just watching the big deposition that was held with Colorado, where they removed Trump from the ballot and they went up to the Supreme Court. And you watch the Supreme, and you couldn't watch, but you could hear the audio of how those lawyers did their arguments of, it's all about the pace. It's all about, where do I speed up my argument? Where do I delay my argument? And Matthew Marsh's ability to hold that space throughout the whole second act as he comes in and he's just there. And he's always just around and he's always just, you can't quite get your hands on him because he's a smarmy asshole in this play. And he just moves and he's snake-like and he's just always writhing away. And it's like, oh, you went that way. Oh, crap. Okay, we got to catch it. No, we can't get you that way. It's great. And and in fact, even he gets sucked up into hysteria at the end, where it's like what are you doing to that she feels cold? What are you doing to her? And, you see how he falls into it too. It's just great. And then also his fear at the end of, I cannot pardon these people because then that undermines my authority. I'm screwed. Sign your name so I can save myself more than save you. Like, just the levels of that. He just did such a good job. Loved his performance. And I was like, Paul Scofield, R.I.P. man, you should have taken lessons from Matthew Marsh as Judge Danforth. And then the other person I want to give a shout out to is our Abigail Williams, Erin Doherty. Because she didn't play Abigail as sexy. She didn't play her as sultry. She played her as, I don't want to say misguided, but she definitely felt youthful, and she felt like someone who, once again, it's that misinterpretation of young love that we see in a lot of these situations of, it made me question more about the relationship between John and Abigail, where when you watch the Winona Ryder and Daniel Day-Lewis one, it's like, okay, yeah, no, they probably did hook up somewhere behind the barn, and there's some sexiness between them. The way they spoke to each other in the bedroom, and it's you walked by me, you touched me. And it's like, okay, well, what exactly was it? Did he brush your hand? Because we never actually say kiss. We just say, there was more questioning in their relationship. Like, it wasn't as sexually driven as we've seen other Abigails be. And the fact that, she gave her character almost a bit of a stutter. Like, she was a bit, not off, but a bit homely. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's just, there was just something different about her Abigail that I liked. It just wasn't the classy, sexy Abigail. It was, you're not playing for the vamp. You're playing as someone who, and maybe it's also because we had the prologue at the beginning where we see the world that they're living in, and you get to fully better, and we'll get more into this about the prologue, but just better understand of where she is coming from prior to the play of this world she is living in, that, she is so repressed and so cast aside by her uncle and by the men of the society, that the minute she does get power, it's understandable why these girls all of a sudden take the power the way they do and fall trap into the power dynamic that gets put upon them. I don't know. I just really like, Ryan's making faces at me, so I'm so intrigued to hear things now.
I don't know what you're talking about in terms of my face. I think, I liked her performance just fine. I thought she did some interesting things. I feel like dramaturgically, I don't know. I would need to go back into it and see if all the things are saying about, like, maybe the way she casts doubt on what their nature of their sexual relationship was like. Because I'm pretty sure she has a line about, like, your hands on my back and pushing me against the wall. So there's seems like there's no dispute that they did make love at some point.
I think she definitely says hands against her back. I don't know if they say make love.
Well, no, I'm not saying they said that, but there's definitely, certain sexual acts have happened between them. I don't think if you're implying that, like, it was just, he brushed her hand and she read too much into it. I don't know if the text really bears fruit on that.
He said something Oh yeah, I was just gonna add that in that scene, I feel like there's more room for kind of like, oh, did they or didn't they? But at the end, he does say, I have known her.
Yeah.
And so I think it's true. Yeah. So I think I have some problems with the choices that she made in this, because which I don't have to talk about yet.
We'll get
but it's because of that.
Yeah. And I guess, like, I don't even personally have a problem with it. I'll be very curious, Sarah, to hear your thoughts on it. But like, I kind of like a lot of the choices she made with these things. And yes, she doesn't necessarily have to be sexy or sultry. We've certainly seen versions that do that. And, you know, knowing that, especially historically, which I know has been changed for the play, there was this massive age gap between them. I think it's very easy to read power dynamics between them into this. And maybe, you know, she didn't necessarily fully consent to what John may or may not have done to her. But then kind of like, you know, in this time felt like, oh, well, we've had relations, therefore you must marry me. That's what we do. Like, I could see an interpretation like that maybe, but I don't think that calls any doubt into what actually happened, as you were kind of suggesting. But I don't know. I would need to go back in.
I'm just scrolling through the script here quickly to see what they actually said in there. Because who knows, maybe I misread the moment. But yeah, it just felt there was more of a, at least at the beginning, there was more of a question of how far did they go? Could this be a case of misinterpretation? But then you're right. John does say, I've known her. But then if the first scene is questioning, is the second scene questioning of, is he lying to try and save Elizabeth and them? I don't know.
I think also it can be boiled down to like, when she's played with like a sexual prowess off the top, there's like a little bit of a desperation that is pulsing through that version of Abigail. But in like Erin's performance, I think like you're right to say, Mac, that like it was a very different, almost like grounded, naive, plainer start for Abigail, which kind of changes, at least for me watching this too, like there changes her trajectory to almost, the desperation it's there because it's like literally the text does say this, like the plain version of her in which kind of like Erin started playing her as, like, made it seem like she was just wanting the truth or like wanting something as opposed to lusting for something. Anyways, that's kind of my take on that. Mac, go ahead.
Okay, so her line in the script is, I know how you clutched my back behind your house and sweated like a stallion whenever I come near. I saw your face when she put me out, and you love me then, and you do now. So
yeah.
So physical contact definitely transpired. And
yes, but once again, clutched behind the back, is that him brushing her back? And she went, oh my God, he's in love with me. And
I feel like at this time, though,
sexy, I don't know.
If any man laid their hands on a woman that wasn't their goodie, it would be seen as promiscuous. Do you know what I mean? Like,
and I also remember when Hale was interrogating John Proctor about his commandments, he cannot remember the adultery one, and needs Elizabeth to remind him. So clearly he believes that what he did was an adulterous act. So I don't think that casts any doubt on his confession later on.
Well, and even Elizabeth Proctor too, to go even further, when she says, she's like, I was very ill, and my husband. You know, I was ill. That's her being like, I was not fit to be bedded, so he bedded someone else while I was ill. You know what I mean? Like, I think the text justifies, that.
Either way, Erin Doherty, very
they did something.
Performance. yeah, there we go. Okay, but let's get into our favorite production or design element of this piece, because there was a few things, and I wonder what Ryan's going to pick, because we know he's not a big fan of running water on stage.
Well, you might be surprised if I can go first then.
Yes,
I was
going
to talk about the rain, and I've never once said I don't like running water. I constantly go to bat for it. I frequently quote the book Great Reckonings in Little Rooms by Burton State, where he talks about the phenomenology of running water on the stage, which I think is neat, but I've never once said I have a problem with it. Yeah, I like running water, and I thought the rain was good. My production element shout out. There's this fun little featurette on the NT at home. If anyone watching this didn't see that but watched the production and wants to revisit that, it was cool how they kind of talked about the difficulties of making that happen, recycling the water, trying to make it sustainable, so it's not this like very ethically dubious thing to just be having all this fresh water fall and get disposed after each show. But yeah, I thought it was a brilliant visual effect. I thought it created this very interesting periphery of the stage. This idea of baptismal cleansing feels very thematically prescient to a lot of what's going on here. And yeah, I was kind of struggling to think of what else really stood out to me production element wise, but at the end of the day, I kept coming back to The Rain. I thought it was a good choice.
The Rain is a very good choice. And I mean, like, it also reflects, like, what's the word, Ryan? What is it in pathetic? No, not
pathetic fallacy. You asked this exact question.
And both me and Sarah know what pathetic fallacy is too. Just saying. But go ahead, keep going.
Well, no, I was going to say once again, like we talked about how the film version lacked pathetic fallacy. The fact that we have this rain curtain always around and that dark environment just works well for the play. Works well, and also it looks really cool. At first, I was like, "Are they doing the rice trick on the rain?" I was like, "No, they're using real water."
The rice.
Because that's what they did last season in King Lear with Stratford. It wasn't rain, it was rice. Same thing with Nicholas Nickleby on Broadway HD. It was rice, not water. So in fact, it actually is real water.
Because it's a baptism, not a wedding. So throw rice here.
Yes, true.
Cool.
True. Jill?
Yeah, so The Rain also stood out to me as well because I just think it's beautiful, and watching that featurette too and hearing how they like recycle it all the time and they're, even had plans of doing stuff with the reservoir after the show. I was like, yes, it's environmentally sound. We love it. I have two kind of like favorite things. So to stay in the realm of set, I really liked the sort of skylight ceiling that kind of was the canopy over the setting. And I noticed it kind of like moved in like up and down to kind of like scope in some of the scenes and also widen it. And I just thought it was a really good sort of like, a lot of images came in my mind, like glass ceiling or like, a very like holy, skylight, the Lord is looking down, the sky is open. Like, I just think there was a lot of kind of, it just created a nice dressing to be an orb around our scenes. And then sound, I liked the sort of like choral moments that filled our transitions and like really proved to be heartbeats to some of the emotions that were happening in like the downstage, and all of that sound was kind of cacophony around in the upstage area. I just thought that was a cool little addition. And you know me, like I'm just like, let's do more stuff with transitions. So I'm like, okay, this is neat. This is like a neat take on this. Yeah. So those are my shout outs.
Love it. Love it. Sarah?
Yeah, the sound was absolutely one of my favorite elements too. I thought the choral aspect was stunning. I just thinking about the opening scene after the rain, you see the rain and then they come in with this like dissonant choral. They're all facing upstage as though they're in a church service, and they're all like waving their arms in unison, and it's like this dissonant singing. I get chills thinking about it. Like that was a powerful opening. And I love that they are, and of course we're going to talk about the prologue and epilogue and everything too, but this was another element that they made their own. They kind of expanded what is literally on the page of the play and added this element that just really like brought you into the world of the show just so viscerally right off the top. But really the staging overall was sort of my other production shout out. I loved the way that in the first, and I guess it be the first and the third act, we saw the girls would sit in the back and just watch the scene, or they might act out little pieces of what the judges were describing or the witnesses were describing had happened, kind of in this hazy lighting in the background. Or I just felt that it was, I lost my train of thought, but then I remembered it. I was going to say that I loved the way when they did the courtroom scenes, the courtroom was actually at the back of the stage. And then when they came into the back room to have their discussions, that was at the front, close to the audience. I thought that it was just unique, and something about adding in the characters watching, and it always feels like multiple perspectives it was just thematic in the play, and we're seeing it on the stage, and it just made it feel like creepy and oppressive. And so I really felt that the staging served the themes of the play so well. So love that.
Yeah. I mean, basically, we talked about everything I was going to talk about. I mean, the rain, love the rain, choral singing, creepy and wonderful, just like sirens calling all these voices into the courtroom. Great. I do want to give a shout out, since we haven't really talked about it much yet, which is Catherine Faye's costume design for this, because she captured the timelessness as well as like the time setting. Like, it felt like this could take place in Massachusetts, but it also felt like you could be in, like, 1950s, 1960s South, and then, like, Hunger Games, like another, 100 years from now in like dystopian future, like Handmaid's Tale. Like, it just, once again, breaking the show out of its, Puritan, high, rough collar look with the big brim hats. It was like creating that more universal, like, this hysteria can happen anywhere at any time. Like the fact that we have the judges in the classic kind of black Professor Snape robes, but then in the next act they're in like trench coats. It's like the law, people can look like anything and they can show up and just get swept up in this moment. It doesn't have to be one way. It doesn't have to be stuck in that, classic Salem setting. We can kind of break it out a bit and have it a bit more timeless with the story, while also still being very timely with how with what happens in the show. Yeah, I really do want to give a shout out to their costuming, because it was one of those things that I feel was subtle, so it wasn't a major draw, but it was one of the things where you watch it and go, "Oh, I see what you're doing." Timeless yet timely, all at the same time. You're bringing the story all around. Good for you. Good on you. So there we go. All right, next question. What was the weakest aspect of the production? And Sarah, you told me before, and you had something you really wanted to lead us off with on this one. So show it to us. Let's see what you got.
Okay, yes. For me, and this is going to be related to what we were just talking about with the Abigail, John Proctor thing. But for me, the weakest part was some of the casting and some of the acting. To talk about the acting first, while there was lots of characters that performances that I loved, and we kind of shouted all of those people out, I felt that there was some that I did not care for. And part of it was that, especially in the first act, I felt like there was a lot of talking at each other and not a lot of actually listening and talking with each other. And it took me out of it. And it didn't feel like everyone was in the same play. Like at times, our Ann Putnam, it felt like she was doing a melodrama, but then Rachel was in sort of a naturalist sort of thing. And then we went to the scenes with Elizabeth Proctor, and she was like very modern. It just did not feel cohesive in the style. And for me, that melodrama that was coming from some of the actors, it felt unmotivated. It didn't feel true. It felt like, I memorized these lines and now I'm going to yell them theatrically at the people around me. I'm not going to think any thoughts. I'm not going to make any discoveries in the moment. I'm just going to like yell these memorized lines. And for me, that really bothered me, because one of the things I love about this play, and what I love about courtroom dramas in general, is I love fast-paced, challenging dialogue where people are going back and forth, and it's like, oh, what about this? Oh, what? And then you as the audience are like going back and forth on what you think and believe. But that only works if you believe the characters. It doesn't work if they all just yell at each other with no really motive, without it feeling truthful and authentic as well. So that, and the fact that it didn't feel like a cohesive decision had been made on what style we were going for, that I felt took away from the show. And for me, I did not love the casting of John Proctor, nor did I love the casting of Abigail. To talk about Abigail first, because we were just talking about this, for me, I thought Erin Doherty was really good. It's not that I believed everything she said. Like, it wasn't that every choice she made felt true, and I believed her. I just didn't think it made sense for who Abigail is. And the reason that I think that is because while I don't need her to be sexy necessarily, because I agree with you that that maybe there's more than one way to play that, the word that came to mind for me was that I think she needs to be seductive. And I don't mean that in a purely sexual way. I mean, how does this girl get everyone to do what she wants? She has married men falling in love with her or whatever with her, you know, depending on our interpretation, whatever it is. She has all these girls doing whatever she wants and committing to this lie for her. She has the judges wrapped around her little finger. Like, that's a charmer.
Yep.
So to me, what I needed from her was to understand why. Like, I need to look at her and in some way, what is it? The way she looks, is it sexy? It could be a myriad of things, but it might be that she is charismatic. Like, what I needed was some sort of charisma that explains why this story is even happening. And so I just felt like she was too, thank you. I just felt like she was
you're literally saying everything that's in my brain. Keep going. This is great.
Amazing. That makes me feel validated. She was just like too weird. And like, I just don't believe that people would be following her around doing her bidding because she was so off-putting. So, and then I felt with also
she needed more Princess Anne energy from The Crown. She needed to bring some more regalness into that role.
Totally. See, that's honestly a great way that you would maybe not with sexiness, but with some sort of gravitas that makes you be like, wow, you know, like you just want to follow this girl. And I similarly did not care for the casting of John Proctor either. I felt that he was too old and he also was not charming enough. And I know that he is sort of a gruff, he's not a friendly guy, but I need to believe that a 15, 16-year-old would be in love with him. And I don't know why they would be. He was too much older than her from the way, I don't know how old he really is, but it seemed, they didn't seem well within a believable realm of age difference. I felt like he was another person. I will say, maybe we'll get to this later. In the final act, in his final couple scenes, I actually really liked what he did with the Leave Me My Name and his final scene with Elizabeth. I liked a lot of that. I felt like for the beginning of the show, though, he was another one where I felt like he was just saying lines. Like I didn't believe that he was thinking any thoughts or of the character he was like coming up. It just felt rehearsed, and he wasn't. I just don't know why anyone would be. Why would a young girl be attracted to him? He was like, and for me, I really think that they did have an affair. Like I think it's pretty clear in the script that something did happen between them, and I actually think it's important that it did, because I think the fact that Abigail's telling the truth is really important, because while she may be morally in a gray area, I don't think, and she's lying about a lot of things, I think it's important that she's not lying about this because he did take advantage of her in a way. So I think I need to believe that there needs to be enough potential chemistry between the two of them that I believe that this could happen and that the whole story is hinging around this relationship. And I didn't get that. And that was a big weakness for me. So that's a very long spiel, but those were my props.
Love it. Jill,
I have to piggyback.
I see you want to jump in. Jump, Jill, jump.
Because it's going to be like, that's basically my thoughts. Like, Sarah Heim, I bow down to you. You just took my brain and said it matched with yours. It's amazing to like add, because I felt the exact same thing about the acting. I said this in other panels too. Like, it's so important, obviously, to bring your own persona to a role, especially with something like a timeless piece like this. But having in the back of your brain, like, what is the overall blueprint? Like, what is this iteration doing? And you're so right, Sarah. I felt like everyone did their own characterization to what they thought their character should be. And then it was not cohesive at all. Like, it was just like, here's my patch of the quilt. And then there's like, what? Like, there's no quilt. Like, there was just, and I think a lot of this rests in, and this irks me so much with, it happens a lot in film, but accents. A lot of that was my weakest. That was my weakest. Hard stop was accents. No, just like and here's the thing is like, accents are hard. They're very hard. And like, but you've got to get to a point, if you have to do an accent, like you got to get to a point where the accent is so ingrained in your body, in your brain, that like, you're not thinking about the accent. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of actors in this production that I know they were just thinking about the accent And that's why I think we got why are they just yelling the text? Like, oh, the text is there and that's all that's there, because you're still worried that you're going to slip into your accent. And I get it. I get that's difficult, but it makes for, when everyone is having to do that, it makes for, literally while watching it, I was like, what is this? Are we trying to say something by having every character have a different accent? Like, is this supposed to be a dramaturgical, like, new way of unpacking this piece of like everyone's dialect or like mother tongue is from a different region? And what does that mean? I'm like, oh, no. This is just, the actors aren't hacking the accents. And it does deter. So I think a lot of even like the character unpacking or like critiques that we've been giving, 90% of that is just those actors being like, you have to attempt to not do your OG accent. And then they did, and it doesn't pay off. And unfortunately, I did feel that a lot from our John Proctor and our Abigail Williams. And those two characters, like, part of me was like, make them not have to do an accent or something. So then at least there is this like little pod of the two of them are connected in some shape or form. Like, right. Like I would have rather that to, because I think that again, then does deter from the chemistry. So it was a combination of accent work and individual character work that mashed together it took away from a lot of like the poignant moments that were happening with like the set and like the choral business and like a lot of Hale's speeches. Like there's definitely points where I was engaged and sunken in, but I was just as quickly taken out because of that lack of cohesion in voice and relationship.
I'll piggyback off you, Jill, because my note was John Proctor sounds like he's trying to do the JFK accent. I want a potty platter. I am JFK. It was like a version of that where I was like, this is a weird accent for John Proctor. Like, why wouldn't they just do an RP accent for the show and keep, once again, get in that timeless, undefined location world that they're in? Because they're clearly not going for, like, maybe they were trying to go for Salem, Massachusetts, but missed it completely. But yeah, like, there's a lot. Yeah, the accent one was a really jarring one where I was like, what is this John Proctor doing for his accent? This feels very weird. Yeah. And I also agree with Sarah that our John Proctor was a little long in the tooth. John Proctor's got to be like, we had Tim Campbell on, Irene's husband, and he played John Proctor in the last time Stratford did it 2 years ago now. And I was like, he's a good age for that. Like, he's a man in his, mid to late 40s, I believe. Tim, correct us if we're wrong, if you're watching. But like he fit the age of what you would think a John Proctor would be. This guy felt like he was, I'm pretty sure he's like at least in his late 50s, early 60s, where it's like even Elizabeth felt a bit older than normal. Like Elizabeth is usually played a bit younger. But yeah, so both of them felt a bit older. So I did feel a bit off in that casting. But the big thing was the filming of it. Like there were times where I felt the camera focused on the wrong thing. Like there were certain moments where I was like, we need to see a certain character more, like cutting over to right before Abigail does I saw the devil and I did this. We needed a moment where we saw her, because she was in the background a lot of it in that scene. But it's like, we need to cut over to her, because that's the joy of film, is when you're on a stage, you're trying to take in everybody. But when you're doing a film on stage, you can actually make a deliberate choice of, no, we're actually going to cut to Abigail in this moment to see her wheels turn and go, I got it. I got my way out of this. And it's going to be, let's start, crying witchcraft around here. Like there need to be more of those moments. Like even when it's like they bring up Mary Warren, there should be more close-ups cut to Abigail giving looks or giving expressions around to her and the other girls. Once again, building, as Sarah said, building up that energy that this person is a lot of things. And one of the things she is smart. She knows how to read the room and then manipulate these men around her and play this game better than anybody else. Like she is playing chess while they're all playing checkers.
Amen.
Right? And it's like, we needed more cuts to her to give her those moments, because all of a sudden she got lost in the community. And it was like, we need, and that's one thing, the film with Winona Ryder did really good is that they could do a lot of close-ups and a lot of cutaway scenes with her as Abigail. Like even like at the beginning when they're doing the sermon prologue scene, they needed to have a zoom in moment with Abigail, because I had to rewind to go, okay, wait, why did he just come down and slap her? I was like, oh, it's because she was talking to Mary Warren across the aisle. And like, we need to get a close up with the two of them to show once again how far they're going to fall apart from each other when Mary Warren makes her choice later on. Like, I thought the filming was off a bit. Like, they just didn't quite focus on the right moments to really, because they do close-ups. Like, I thought they were opposed to a close-up shot. They did do them. It was just, we need to give a few more of those moments to the characters when the key moments in their brain were being done. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we need to see those moments to get the next moment clicked.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mac, because I feel like, especially with this production, like there is such a strong presence of the girls, like in either like flanking the back or the like the upstage.
That's another part.
Or the
like I would love them
downstage.
to cut more up to the back too.
Yeah,
like,
and so I
those
think like on the stage, like the production was trying to really make the young girls fill in those transition moments, which again, we've talked about this and like, why isn't every iteration of the Crucible not bringing up our ladies? I will never know. Anyways, but I think, Mac, that would have been a perfect like dramaturgical swing at the pro shot of like, let's take this one step further. And a lot of our close-ups devoted to the Mary, the Abby, the Elizabeth that are coming down, and to fill that space a bit more. Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this?
Most of you have already taken the thoughts out of my mouth. I always feel bad when anyone, myself included, answer to weakest element is one actor in particular, because that's just like the worst thing about this was you. But sadly, I do feel bad saying that in light of that comment, that I think it's no coincidence that none of us picked John Proctor as a cast shout out. And in a production of Crucible, I think that can be fatal if you don't really have a very strong John Proctor to bring the whole thing together, because we spend so much time with him. And Brendan Cowell, the actor, who I've seen be good elsewhere, and I want to stress that. He was John in Yerma, the National Theatre production that we reviewed a while back. He was very good in that, and I looked it up. I looked him up after this because the accent was driving me crazy a little bit. And he's Australian. But he's Australian is the thing. And he's not even like a British actor. But I don't know if that makes it make more sense or less sense. But I guess whenever we see him in production like Yerma, where he's doing a British accent, I guess that's also a learned, received pronunciation, perhaps, on his part. But he also probably lives and works in the UK, so I guess he's more familiar with that, so it suits him more naturally. But in addition, like you say, JFK, Mac, I kept hearing Goodwill Hunting,
that's another good one.
How do you like them apples? Pack the car.
Or Christopher Walken.
Yeah. I feel kind of bad singling him out this way, but the production or just the play itself singles John Proctor out constantly. It builds the whole drama around him. It takes something that was supposed to be a political allegory and makes it about this one guy and his good name. And I felt like
the name is the allegory.
But to me, it seems like he was a real struggle for me. And in light of the accents in particular, another character who I thought is indicative of this lack of cohesion that I don't think anyone has mentioned yet is our Ezekiel Cheever, who's played by an actor named Nathan Amzai.
Which character is he again?
He's just one of the guys. He comes in to the Proctor's house to bring them in to face judgment.
Yes.
Very Italian in this production, which kind of doesn't make sense if they're kind of trying to do some sort of historical accuracy with the accents. He seemed like a 1930s cartoonish gangster, or a D-tier gangster villain from the Adam West Batman show. I don't know. And the accents, they were trying so hard to sound some kind of American, all of them. But the plot is set less than a century after British settlers came to Massachusetts. They would still be mostly British. Their parents came from there.
Would be.
So I don't know why a British production needs to try so hard to be this is authentically American. The authentic American back then was very British. They called it New England for a reason. I'm with you all on the accents and just kind of the way that certain characters and even directed down.
Even for the sheer fact too, like if everyone just stayed in like a received pronunciation or a general, that to me packs a punch, because it's like, look at all it's like Britain taking a stab at like a classic American play. Like that has me kind of scope into this production in another realm. Like, you know, like how hearing it with those accents, but in, you know, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot more they could have done with not doing so much with the accents.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. And Ryan, since we made you go last for this last question, we'll let you lead off this classic Ryan Borochovitz question that always gets tossed your way, which is, would you recommend this production to others? Ryan, would this end up in one of your syllabi if you were teaching an adaptation course?
Well, adaptation, definitely not, because this is the most straightforward production of the Crucible possible. I'm not going to say, look at
maybe
this.
Compare and contrast it with the movie. I don't know.
Well, the movie,
the
sure.
representation of the stage show, and then like show this as like a film.
Yeah, like if it was a film adaptation course, I would maybe consider the movie. I don't even remember what answer I gave when you phrased the question to me this way for that. But only if like I wanted to harp on like specific things like method acting, I guess, and why you shouldn't do it. But I don't know. But no, this honestly, if, you know, coming right off the weakest element that we all, I think, had a lot to say about, to me, this production didn't really grab me. If we're saying, like, just in general, would you recommend it to others? I sadly don't think that this is a production I'd be like, oh, you gotta watch the National Theatre Crucible. And if somebody was interested in watching the Crucible, I think I would sooner direct them towards the movie than this one, which is a shame, because I usually try to favor the original play version or something closer to an actual stage version when I'm recommending plays to people. But if it's between those two, I hate to say it because we have so many things to say about the movie, but a lot of this production made me appreciate a lot of things about the movie that I thought I didn't like. I don't have to get into details about what, but like in general, this one kind of didn't do it for me. You know, it is just a stage version of the Crucible, a serviceable one at that. So if somebody's reading the Crucible in a course or otherwise and wants to see what it looks like on stage, sure. But like, it just, to me, it wasn't, I struggled to think of a production element that really did it for me. And I'm like, oh yeah, the rain, because it's obvious. It's right there. It's slapping us with water in the face. But I really, wasn't feeling this one in a lot of ways. And I feel bad saying that. I often try to be positivity guy on these. But yeah, it was, I said in the previous one that the movie gave me like good community theater vibes. This one gave me lukewarm community theater vibes, and for the National Theatre. Well, and for the National Theatre, I expect better than this. I don't know. It just across, there's a lot of things in it I liked, but they didn't outweigh the things that I didn't like. And to not harp on this point too much, but I said my piece in the last episode about the Crucible, why I'm kind of over this play in a lot of ways. I don't think it's as relevant or prescient in our political context as people like to say it is. But like the marketing that I saw for this production was like an urgent new revival. And I don't feel there was anything urgent about this. I don't think there's a lot that's urgent about the Crucible in general, as I said last time, but I really don't feel like this production uncovered why we need to be revisiting this piece. Even though I think there are ways you can do that, as I said last time, I can't think about what was so urgent about this one. I don't know. Somebody tell me I'm wrong.
No.
Sarah, Jill, I see you both nodding. So who wants to go first? I'll leave it up to the both of you.
Sure. I was going to say, I think I'm going to tell you you're right.
Well, you were sitting next to me while we watched it, so I kind of assumed you.
Yeah. So secretly, I it didn't do it for me, and I was really excited to see this one too. Again, from the advertising and the cast and the images that they kind of put forward. So I was a little let down. Definitely, I would even say if you are reading this play for a class, to watch the movie over this stage adaptation, because I think we've already kind of unpacked this a little bit, but there's a lot more themes that are present in the text that do a really good job of being on display in the movie, or like stabs at what the themes of the play might be doing and how they could be portrayed. I think they're, brought to the nth degree in the movie versus what we see in this production. Yeah. So so another thing I wanted to bring up, I didn't get a chance to see this, but I know it was phenomenal. So my hometown is Windsor. So University of Windsor did a production of The Crucible years back. Great friend and brilliant actor of mine, Mauro Mayo, played John Proctor. Mauro is this dashing, incredibly handsome, like built, chiseled human being with the kindest soul and heart. and he was John Proctor. And I'm like, that is John Proctor. And like just seeing the pro shots of him in that role, he had like the blood and the sweat, like literal dirt and sweat, and like an open shirt and just like a rawness. And yeah, there's several other people, their names are escaping me at the moment, but I know that were a part of that class and a part of that production. And I just remember that all across Windsor, and even hearing about it in Toronto, like that production was so good. So if people can get their hands on maybe an archival of University of Windsor's The Crucible, I would probably suggest that over this. But yeah, that's kind of where I want to leave that.
Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, I have to agree. I kind of went back and forth on this question a little bit because my gut instinct is no, I would not recommend it because because of these exact reasons. Jill, you were saying that the themes were some of those themes were more clear in the film. And I think a big part of that is because of the problems with the accents, the problems with the acting, the lack of cohesion in the cast. For me, the issues with the casting of John Proctor and Abigail and their lack of chemistry together, it felt like all of that detracted from, like, I couldn't connect with it. And if we're talking about whether it's relevant and whether it's timely and whether the themes are coming through, like it doesn't feel relevant. It doesn't feel timely. It does not feel like the themes are coming through when I can't connect with the people that are in the story. And if the John Proctor Abigail relationship isn't believable, then we're missing all of the themes around what we were just talking about, around like women lying about relationship. Like women don't lie about being taken advantage of or being like, I don't know. I just the tricky themes around this relationship, and that could be made really relevant, can't happen if I don't even believe that it's a completely unbelievable relationship. She's lying about a lot of stuff and not this. Like the problematic nature of the relationship. That's really what I'm trying to get at, I guess. So, and the acting is always the thing that's the most important to me. Whenever as an actor, it's the thing I'm looking through most. So I just I can't say, go watch this if the acting left me that disappointed. However, the one thing that I think the reason I kind of like oscillated on this a bit was because I really think that this piece works much better on the stage than in film, because the other theme for me that is the most important thing, or the brilliance of what the brilliance that I think is of this piece, is that when it's done on stage, every single thing that you hear is hearsay. You don't see anything happen. You only hear about it. So whether it's the relationship with Abigail and John Proctor, or whether it's anything else that happens, you never know what's true or is untrue because you don't see it. You only hear about it. And to me, that is the brilliance of the play. But of course, you can't do that on film, because in film, you see everything. And that's what I didn't love about the movie, that like, while there was a lot of things I liked about it, and then some we didn't, as we discussed, that was the thing that kind of was like, I don't think that this is really meant to be on film. I think it's meant to be on the stage. And there was lots of staging, like production elements of the staging of this that I loved. So I think maybe my answer is like, no, I wouldn't recommend it as just a good watch necessarily. I think there's probably better versions, but maybe if someone wanted to see something that showed how can this be done on stage in a way that is really powerful, looking at this production for the staging elements, because of the way that they were true to the piece, but also added their own bits, like with, as we talked about, with the staging and the choral elements. And I think that there's something to be said for some of the brilliance of what they did production wise. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike this production. I think there are definitely some very good, as Sarah said, some very good production elements that I enjoyed. I definitely think the pace was better in this compared to the film with Daniel Day-Lewis, because of Paul Scofield and his molasses reading of his character. But like, was it amazing? Like was it one I wanted to write home about? Not really. Like as I said in our pre-screen chat, which is I would have loved to see Millie Alcock do this, because there is a there was another version of this production that was done at the Gielgud with Millie Alcock now taking over the role of Abigail. I'm like, I would have loved to have seen her do it, just because I feel it'd be a very different Abigail than what we got. I think it would be a much more, I'm not sure what the right word is, grounded, commanding Abigail that I think Erin Doherty just chose not to go with. So, and I mean, I appreciate the actors swinging for things like accents, like character choices, because I mean, that's the joy of performances. You can try and do that New England accent. It may not work well for you, but that's okay. You try. That's the joy of art. You know, somebody else may watch this and go, oh my God, that John Proctor, he made me feel things at the end. Yay. Ryan shaking his head going, because he did not feel that way.
Well, yeah, I would never take that reaction away from someone else if they genuinely felt it.
So that's why I'm like, it's a serviceable production. Somebody may like it way more than I did. Like, you know, it's one of those things where I'm like, I didn't hate it. I would have loved them to go further with it. And I think once again, it comes down to how did they film this and make it more dynamic? Because I think that would have really helped this production And NT Live did the same thing with Henry V, where we just did a recording of Henry V, and we went, a lot of this is shot in very basic proscenium. It's not, you know, dynamic. That's one thing I do appreciate when you watch a Stratford Pro Shot is they do play sometimes with the cameras, depending on the production. They will take some chances there. They don't always just, you know, stick the camera and go, play it out. Like you do see them playing around with shots and things like that. Because Ron, who is it that usually does the Stratford ones? It's what's his name?
Oh, Barry Average.
Barry Average, thank you. Maybe NT Live needs to go talk to Barry Average.
I think he would love to do that.
Yeah,
Barry, get on out there because you film very dynamic productions. Like, and I think that's what really kind of hindered my enjoyment of this production is just not that the actors weren't giving energetic performances. They were getting into that hysteria, full tilt. Sometimes not always connected with each other, but they were like, you know, they themselves were in that hysteria mode. When they were trying, but it's like, if you don't have because it's different. Like when you watch the Crucible on stage, you can't help but get swept up in the energy of the performances on stage because it is one of those pieces that you just get sucked into, especially in the second act when we get into the courtroom drama of what's going on and the tension as they were yelling about accusing each other. But it can die really fast on film, always in a wide shot, or you have an actor like Paul Scofield who can't figure out pacing for the life of him. Like this play can die on film. And I think that's what both these versions have shown is if you either don't get the pace right or you're not filming it right, then this play can die because it has to be done in a very dynamic way. This play begs to be done in close-up, begs to be done at a fast pace to get the energy. Like this play, it's funny, like we've seen a lot of these pro shots now. And the biggest thing to take away with the Crucible is it's a very hard needle to thread on film. It is not an easy play to just get right on film. You got to hit so many right notes to get it just right. And this play didn't do a terrible version, but it wasn't a version to write home about. So would I recommend it? Yeah, if you're in an English class and you want to see a version with an actor that you recognize from The Crown, why not? Go for it. Have some fun. But is it one that I'm like, oh my God, it was, changing my life? No, it wasn't that. So
if I can add to that, Mac, too, because I think this play very easily can be extremely boring.
Yes.
Like it can get
like
really
a lot of
boring
Arthur Miller.
Because there's also just a lot of jargon and a lot of historical specificity and context and, like the community itself is so inside this ecosystem that is very like inclusive to each other. Yes. And so you can feel very othered or the outsider watching this. And if the performers, and I think this falls on the actor and the director helming any sort of medium you're going to place this piece in, if you don't drive the shit out of that text and really pepper it with like subtext and emotional backing, I'm going to get lost. I'm not going to lie. In both the movie and the pro shot we just watched, I'm not going to lie, there were pockets where I'm like, I'm confused. Like, and I've read this play and I love this play, but watching it, I'm like, okay, wait, who's talking again? Why are we? So it's hard because again, like this text, like for all the reasons we just mapped out, we've all been mapping out, like it can, in the snap of a finger, become a snooze fest So it's like there's a lot of hard work to put into it. So yeah.
Arthur Miller is a very wordy playwright, and people underestimate the energy and effort it takes to get him right. It's one of those, like, kind of like Aaron Sorkin, as a writer. Like, either like your performance lives or dies, or how well you understand the rhythms of this text. And yeah, that's one of those tricky things.
Sarah, were you going to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think what you're saying, Jill, is so true. And the text being really challenging text, because as you were speaking, I just had this memory from the film version of something that will actually stay with me for a long time. Was in that production, the moment where the Reverend Hale finds out that Mary Warren told John Proctor that they were faking it, and he, in a second, like, his reaction to realizing that they might have put those people to death wrongly, like that, the way he flipped and was like, it does matter, but you needed to tell me, because 17 I just killed 17 people or whatever. Like, that was the most powerful part of the whole movie. From, again, the Reverend Hale, like one of the characters that we don't really think about very much, but like, he was the most memorable part of that film to me. And that just came to me as you were speaking, Jill, because I was thinking that's why it matters that we believe the characters and that the text feels true to them, because you're right about this text being challenging. It needs to be done at a pace. We maybe are working with accents, but in the text itself, it's written in a particular dialect. So, and it feels theatrical as well. It doesn't necessarily feel complete, because it's a period piece. So it doesn't just feel like you and I just speak today. So it's kind of like doing Shakespeare, where it's like,
yes, it is.
I'm using a text that has a style, but I have to make it true to me. And when the actors do a good job of actually making it sound like their own thoughts, their own voice, this is such a powerful piece. Like, there is moments like that just hit you right in the heart. But if you don't make it, if they don't make it truthful, if it feels like a period piece, lofty theatrical dialogue, then it's kind of like, what is this about? Like, why do I care? You know, like, so I think you both just put that very astutely, and it just brought to mind that performance. So
I think also, just kind of going off this too, we're going on a little rabbit hole, but just to kind of, again, this just came up by you saying this, Sarah, like, this piece is, every individual in this story feels smothered and trapped and scared. And they all have their own reasons for feeling that. And they are tethered so closely to what their reasons and opinions are, and they are not wanting to waver. And that, I think, is an instance that we saw again with this production of everyone maybe was trying to do that for their individual track. But again, they like putting it in the ecosystem of this like pressure cooker of a society. And even like Hale gets sucked in, and he starts kind of, it's kind of like a Black Mirror episode. It's like, once you enter this community, like, there's no escaping. You're smothered. You have a truth. It is your truth. You're not wavering from that truth. And so, like, if every, and again, the text does that. So if that's just in the back of the mind as the actor or director or team working on this, of, the text is serviceable to this, you just, you're smothered and stay to your truth. And then boom, that's a strong crucible. Because then when people do die, or we do, people do lose their name, or we see people get shackled, the audience, the looker onto that, you're going to feel it kind of is like a Game of Thrones or something. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, they killed off my favorite character or something. Right. But that's hard. Like, everyone has to stay in their same lane, but in the same racetrack. Wow. We just made that modern.
Anyways. I like that.
Yeah.
Love this, guys. We're unpacking so much about the Crucible that, like, we just have to do a production of the Crucible.
I would love it. I mean, Crucible is one of my favorite plays. I would absolutely be part of it in one way or another.
Mac, will you be Judge Danforth?
I would
show us how it's done.
Yes.
Nice. Show Paul Schofield's ghost how it's done.
I will show Paul Schofield's ghost how to do a proper Judge Danforth. I love it. And Ryan, since we haven't heard from you in a hot minute, we're going to get back to you again for our dramaturgical based questions for this. So this production added prologue and epilogue sequences narrated by the chorus of the girls from the town. How did these additions impact your viewing of the piece? What did it do to the show for you, Ryan?
Yeah, I thought this was such an interesting thing that I kind of, I genuinely don't know where the text of that prologue came from. And that might be a strange way of prefacing my comments here, because I know exactly where the epilogue came from. If you have a copy of the play on hand, you'll notice that there's this little biographical thing at the end called Echoes from the Corridor, I believe is the title that Arthur Miller gave it. And it's those little 1 or 2 sentence things about what happened to various members of the town, historically speaking, the real people after the events of the play. The last one being that Abigail herself showed up in a different town believed to be some kind of sex worker. And that's the note that we end on here. And it's funny. I think I wanted to say something about this in our previous Crucible episode about the movie, but the conversation went in different directions and I never really found an elegant place to bring it up. I thought it was kind of strange that film ended with the very based on a true story pick, white text on black screen about how many people died in Salem. Remember everyone, this is a true story. And I thought part of what I thought was interesting about it there is that it takes this thing that is very much the screen adaptation of the play and almost acts as if we're sidestepping the play itself, and it's just, this is a movie based on a true story that Arthur Miller happened to write a screenplay that was maybe on stage once or twice before we turned it into this movie. But it seemed like it was doing more to emphasize the reality of the history more so than embracing the fact that this is a fictionalization of the history. And that's what that kind of text, in the, familiar semiotic trappings of the based on the true story movie is really trying to communicate. You might have watched a light fictionalization, but don't forget this was real. Now you can tell everyone all the facts about the Salem witch trials. And I don't tend to love that kind of thing. I'm, in my own research, I'm very interested in the relationship between historical fiction and its historical reference, but usually erring on the side of we need to embrace it as fiction more so than trying to say that now we know the history because we saw it in a work of fictionalization. So why I bring that up is the Echoes from the Corridor little postface, I won't even call it an epilogue, that Arthur Miller provides in most published texts of the play, is because I don't think it's meant to be staged. It's kind of just like a little gloss or appendix that if you happen to be curious about the history, here you go. He also does provide this little preface where he talks about some of the liberties he took with the fictionalization and the historical figures, but that wasn't the text that got into the prologue that we had here. They sort of wrote this interestingly poetic piece, and I'm actually struggling to remember a lot of the details of what they said in the prologue. Maybe others will refresh my memory when you say your piece about it. But I feel like it's trying to do the same thing, this based on a true story of now that you've seen this, where are they now? What happened to Abigail and Paris and whoever else got an honorable shout out in this piece? And it's sort of, it rubs me the wrong way because it feels like it's an anti-fictionalist stance that what is important about this is that it really happened, not that we can tell a compelling allegory about it. It is sort of, and it's shirking the allegory, not just the 1950s McCarthyist allegory, but also it neuters any attempt we make to try to specifically latch it onto other circumstances because it's really anchoring it in the very specific 1600s historical context. So to me, I felt like these additions weakened my experience of the piece that I already, as I said in the previous question, wasn't too enamored with. Mac, you're making an interesting face, as everyone else seems to be either nodding or staring. Tell me I'm the witch for thinking this. What did others think?
Mac, do you wanna go off that?
Sure. I'll disagree slightly with Ryan on this because I did enjoy the addition of the prologue and epilogue because I thought the prologue did a very good job of, and it's scary now because of the world we live in today, of setting up where these girls are coming from. That they talk about how repressed and sidelined they were, that, as I mentioned early on in our conversation, that it gave more validity as to why do these girls do what they do. when they are so repressed, when we really see the uncle come down the aisle and backhand this teenage girl for daring to laugh in church and talk during the singing, it sets the stage so quickly to go, you are in a, not like in the fact that we know, like, people down in, not to generalize, but we have evangelical Baptist Catholic groups today that are just as repressive and boxed in as we see what's his name? Paris has done to his community, where he has basically, scared the living shit out of them and has boxed them into this world of fear that he's strangleholded them. And the fact these girls now go, wait a minute, they're believing everything we say. So when Mary Warren comes in and goes, I am a person of the court, it is my duty to be there, I now go, I get it. Because this week when we are recording it, I watched a very interesting editorial about one of my most reviled politicians of the world, Mitch McConnell. And the person talked about how this week he announced at age 82, in November, he will be stepping down from his leadership position in the Senate. And he talked about in his speech where he announced this departure, my legacy. I feel I have done the duty to, bullfrog, bullfrog, bullfrog. I'm a turtle, horrible human being, Grim Reaper. And one of the editorial people said, what Mitch McConnell's legacy will be is the danger of power and how it reflects what it can do in a judicial system. Because Mitch McConnell will forever be known as the man who stole a Supreme Court nomination from Obama by denying Merrick Garland's appointment to the Supreme Court, not even giving Merrick Garland the politeness of a hearing to interview him. No, they didn't even do that. He just went, oh crap, it's, we're like 8 months out away from the election. We got to hold this off till after the election. Then Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies 6 weeks, or not even 6 weeks, 5 weeks even before the next election. And he does that, crap, we're going to push Amy Coney Barrett through because I can. And thus changed the entire Supreme Court judicial system. But he did it because, first of all, he always wanted to do it. Second of all, he had the power to do it as Senate Majority Leader. And the editorial wrote about how just because you have the power to do this doesn't mean you should. And
that's the lesson we learned from Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff Goldblum. But it's the same thing here, where it's like these women live in such a repressed, fear-mongering mindset that the minute they're given an ounce of "we hear you, we see you," they're like, people starving on an island and they found the one food supply, and they're all just gonna, hunker down on this one piece of power and hold on to it. So it makes sense of why a Mary Warren, why a Abigail Williams will, clutch onto this power as best they can. And the prologue setting that up. And then you see the fallout of that, where it's like, yeah, your legacy is that you got innocent people killed, and you also ended up supposedly as a prostitute after you stole 30 pounds from your uncle. It's like, what did that power ultimately get you in the end? Mitch McConnell will leave the Senate in probably 2027, I think, or 2026, whenever his final term is up, and he will bullfrog away back to Kentucky. And, his legacy will forever be tarnished because he reached too far and did this thing that has irrecoverably changed the U.S. because he put those 3 justices on with Trump that overturned Roe v. Wade and sent women back, that have now put these Supreme Court justices on, who have now allowed Donald Trump to kick the can down the line enough that, by the time we actually get him into the trial about inciting an insurrection, it may be too late. Like, his legacy because Mitch McConnell, as much as I hate the guy, he did play ball. He made sure that the government stayed open as best he could. Like, he played ball with whoever he was. I'm not saying he's a good person. I'm just saying he was an old school politician who, as he gained more and more power, became more and more obstructionist and just downright horrible. And it's the same thing here, where the prologue, I think, sets it up well, and the epilogue shows, was it worth it? Was it worth this journey, Abigail Williams? Was it worth this journey, these girls? Because now all they're remembered for are the fact they tried witchcraft and had innocent people hanged in that town, and that's what that town is known for. So I don't know. I like the prose. I think it did a good job of setting up the world and gave more validity as to why these girls go on this journey in the show. And I think the film tried to do that with Winona Ryder, but it didn't quite hit the same way. So I didn't mind this prologue. I don't know. Jill and Sarah, what do you guys think? And I also think Ryan wants to get back in too, because he's giving me interesting looks.
Go ahead.
I'll piggyback, and this might quell some of your thoughts, Ryan, too. Or like I'm halfway between both of you, because I think what they did was half baked. And what you're bringing up, Mac, like, yes, like flank this piece with the women, have them come downstage, have them smother the men in this piece. Like that, I've said this on the last one, and I will say this until I play Abigail Williams myself. The women can bring this piece without changing a single piece of text, can bring validity to why do the Crucible in the 2020s. Yeah, like I just think you have this wonderful opening. Again, I was so excited because I'm like, oh, this is like a Greek chorus. Like they are going to be the ones moving the set pieces. They're going to be ones trying to change this world. But they didn't. We got set changes in the dark. Yeah. Why couldn't they do that though? Like, why couldn't you have the women set up the chairs in the court? Where, why can't they have the girls, as an omnipresent, maybe even setting the table at the Proctor's house? Like these young women who are not in the political side of this community are not even validated in their religious beliefs. They can't even fucking read. Sorry, there's my swear word. And so by subtextually and in my beautiful transitions, have that power be shown. And it really is only through Abigail Williams as this like leader of the pack who kind of has the text written for her to try to do something about it. It doesn't work because women living in a male dominated society, but I mean, she's trying. And I just think, again, they have the sort of mirrored aspect happening with the epilogue, but I'm like, okay, you set something wonderfully up. You ended it, even though I kind of hear you, Ryan, like it kind of fell a little bit flat of like, great, now you're just going to like have the women state some facts, which I think that is a wonderful opportunity. And again, this would have to be cleared with like the Arthur Miller estate, but like to do something like add a monologue, epilogue, an updated something or other for the women to say or something in this type of iteration if you're going to go there. But they set up the bookend so well, but then they're lost. And as much as the choral backing of them was lovely, it wasn't enough. Like it really wasn't enough because we don't see their faces enough. We don't see their bodies. We don't see, so it's all of these, and the females, face, body, beauty. These are a lot of the times, the only time that we're, existence is even acknowledged is because of our physicality and because of, and then so to not have that wonderful setup carried through. Yeah, I was sad. Like it squelched the sort of like, hunger and excitement that I was again with this production. And then I was like, it's doing like the antithesis of what I wanted it to be doing, and it almost like to me spotlit. It set it up so that we were aware that they were doing something, but I'm almost like, because they didn't carry it through and it was half baked, it made me want them not to have done something with it then, I don't know. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Sarah, how do you feel?
Yeah. Can we do the Crucible?
Can we please?
I am so on your, like into your vision for this. And I really think we should do it.
Amen.
We can chat.
Hard House, hit us up.
Let's chat. We're doing it. We're doing it. Who would you want to be, Sarah?
I would love to play Elizabeth Proctor.
That's what I'm saying. I was just about to say, I think, please be the Elizabeth to my Abigail. It's happening. Whoever's listening, watching, we're doing it. Please.
We're doing it.
The first official live production by Cup of Hemlock Theatre will be the Crucible.
Bam. Yeah. So like, yes, just big yes to that. Yeah, this is so interesting hearing you all talk about it. I'll say that I did like it, and I'll explain why, but hearing, Jill, what you're saying, I fully agree that they needed to go further, because I agree with what multiple of you said, that what I liked about the prologue was that it set up some context for why the girls would do what they did. I had kind of made a note of one of the line that really stuck out to me. Like, I think I actually paused it and went like, ooh, and I wrote it down. They said something about we were supposed to bow our heads and never speak. And that they expected us to be grateful for what we were given. And it really did strike me that, because for me, one of the issues of the play, and I know we talked about this about when we were talking about the film, is that while the majority of the people who were victimized by these trials were women, somehow this play makes the women the villains of the story, and it kind of plays into that like seductive, evil temptress thing that I don't love. But this gave me some context to go, yeah, now I see why they got, even as you said, a smidgen of power, a smidgen of being able to be seen and heard. And if you're going to oppress people, then maybe this is what's going to happen. Like, I liked that they were doing something with that, and maybe challenging that original sort of theme, the way that the women were treated in this play. I liked that. And I know I keep talking about this, but I think had the relationship with John Proctor and Abigail been a little bit more believable, like this, to your point, Jill, this would have been so powerful, because we can see why would Abigail become this angry that he had tossed her aside. It's because in this society, she had nothing, no power, no voice. And then he uses her and tosses her aside. And so it's not just about a romantic, grievance. It's actually so much more, which is set up with this prologue. But I think you're right. I think it set it up, and then it kind of just didn't do enough with it. And then, of course, maybe had some of the chemistry and the performance and the choices with Abigail and some of those things, had they been a little different, maybe it would have felt more powerful. But I think you're right. I think it needed more through lines of that same idea throughout. Interestingly, with the epilogue, it didn't bother me too much. It bothered me less than it did in the movie, where the facts came across the screen. I think because it's theater, when they read those facts, I didn't even hear them so much like, this is true. Abigail was a prostitute. I didn't really believe that. It was more that it was enough to remind me that this is something that really happened. And I think sometimes we've talked about with this play, like, is it relevant to do it still? Like, is it still relevant today? And to me, kind of reminding us at the end that this actually was a true story. Like, this did happen in some version. This happened. It kind of worked for me, because it reminded me, like, right, okay, yes, this was theatrical, this was entertaining and everything, but actually things like this do happen. And I think maybe I was assisted with this, with the costuming and the stylization of the production, because it didn't feel extremely truthful to the 1600s. It felt sort of like this could be any time. The facts just felt like sort of a generic reminder that, like, this is a cautionary tale. So I think, but that was sort of how I took it. I didn't take it super, super literally, for whatever reason. So yeah, I would say that the prologue and epilogue did work for me. And I think I liked that they chose to do something with it. They were like, we're going to do the Crucible, but we have some opinions about the themes, and we're going to try to highlight those. But I think you're right, Jill. I think they just didn't. They should have gone farther.
Should have gone farther.
And if I can add to, just like subtly as well, like by saying like, oh, let's go farther with the women and let's use women to lift this. I don't mean like the women are the force, hear us roar. I mean, once you open the door to that, you then start to get, Abigail and Elizabeth, woman on woman, hello, Handmaid's Tale. Like, you start cracking open the unfortunate sort of being a woman living in a society of other women who our voices are trying to be heard. And a lot of the times we cut and claw our fellow ladies just to, make a stance. So I feel like by opening up if this production too, like I'm saying, like if they brought kind of more of that to the forefront, either like through them moving the furniture or like whatever transitioning, you could have also gotten like conflict between the young girls, conflict between the ages, like, because that exists, right? And so there's just like more layers. There's so many more layers that you can do with this, you know? And I think that is completely, not completely taking it away from the 1950s original lens, but it certainly is it's kind of going as far away as you can, I think, with this, because I feel like back like the McCarthyism, like 1950s, like this is a bunch of, you know, men talking this out, political realms, like great, but it's like, what if we look at it through the subtext, you know, spin stuff on its head. Anyways, we're giving away all of our production.
Save it, Jill, save it.
Trademark Cup of Hemlock. Do not steal my ideas. I will find you and get you hanged. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay. Whoa. Well, Jill, I'll let you lead off the next question after that feisty comment, because we have a feisty question, which is, this production cut the scene at the top of Act 2 in which John Proctor meets with Abigail in the woods. What are your thoughts with this scene's removal? How did its absence impact your viewing of the piece? Jill, you are the one that spearheaded this question, so we'll let you lead us in this question.
Why did you take it out? Because, again, clearly, like, the show moseyed on, but I think we've all touched on this tonight. If any scene would have given us maybe more of a semblance in this particular production of that chemistry between John Proctor and Abigail Williams, it would have been this one that wasn't included. This one, I'm going to harken back to what Sarah said. I think an iteration of Abigail can be very sexy and promiscuous and have a, you know, that sort of way. But absolutely, you don't have to go there at all. But I do stand by what Sarah said of there has to be seduction. There has to be this lust. There has to be this, again, like some form of desperation for self. Like, and John Proctor, like, is the only sort of vehicle that she can see helping her get what she wants. And again, utilizing all the things that we are capable of utilizing as women to, you know, make our voices heard or make our way in the world. That scene brings a lot of that to light. Like, so we see a lot of Abigail, which we don't see a lot of her in this play, but in that scene, we get to see a lot of her. And I think it's wonderful too for the actors playing John Proctor and Abigail Williams in the scene, because we get to see what they're doing with those characters and their reactions. And I would say that's where we see both of those characters' cores the most. And so when you remove that, you're kind of stripping away the conflict of the sort of like inner conflict that's happening on this, you know, macro court religious sphere. So I noticed that it was gone. I in watching this production, like I didn't know, like I wasn't like, oh wait, I wasn't waiting for it per se, but I do remember when Ryan and I stopped watching it, I was like, yeah, where's that scene? And then I went back and read that scene. I was like, there is so much here that is gone. And again, to me too, that scene is, if we're going to talk about, I mean, obviously this might sound weird, but like, obviously this is a play, but that two-hander between them is like, in my opinion, the most like emotionally theatrical that this piece gets. So it also reifies like, why did Arthur Miller rewrite this chunk of history as a theater piece? Like, to me, that scene is like, okay, here's your classic two-hander that can be done in theater study. It's checking all of the boxes. Like, you know, this is an instance where, would you recommend this production to others? Like, would you recommend, what piece of literature would you recommend, like actors or students? Like, this scene, the top of Act 2 of the Crucible. Like, there's so much, there's so much there. Yeah, I just think it has to be there, because regardless of what angle you're putting on these characters, we get to see what angle you're putting on them through this scene. Yeah. Bam. Yeah. That's my
love that. Sarah?
Wow. Yeah. Amen. I feel like that was it. That was the explanation. I love what you said that about the interpersonal, like these two characters in comparison to sort of the larger themes of the play. I think that really spoke to me. I think that's maybe a big piece of, I think a lot of what we've been complaining about wasn't really about, at times it was kind of the larger themes. Like we liked a lot of the things about the staging, and we had mixed opinions about the prologue and the epilogue, etc. But we all had some issues with some of the specifics of the character work, the interpersonal relationships that we're not seeing because of the strange accent work and the acting challenges. And I think that what you just said hit it exactly on the head, that this play has a lot of big themes, a lot of larger commentary that it's making. There's a lot of characters, so it's got that grandiose, like, theatrical feel, but we also, the core of the play is also these individual, like, interpersonal relationships that are so important. And so to cut a key scene between two of our main characters that allows us a window into their relationship, as you said, allows us a window into who they are. Not only are you taking away the heart of the piece, because you're taking away the people, and the people are our way into the themes and the grand religious and social commentary. The only reason we care about any of that is because we care about the people in the story. And so as soon as you start taking away the stuff that makes the people who they are and explains what is driving them as individuals, I think you lose the heart, you lose our connection. And then by default, we end up losing our connection to the overall larger themes because we don't care, because we don't care about these people. So I think, dead on. Why did
Snaps.
they cut it?
Yeah. Ryan, as our man of adaptation, what are your thoughts on this choice?
Yeah, like, I guess it was a choice if we want to call this slightly adapted. Yeah, I missed the scene. Yeah, I can't say it better than Jill and Sarah have said it. Like, yeah, there's just so much meat in this scene. And I genuinely am baffled to even think of what could have been the dramaturgical reason justifying removing it. Just, like, who, as part of this production, looked at that and said, this is boring, we probably don't need it, or this is superfluous, we could do without it. Like, is it out of a rush just to get to the courtroom? Clearly that was something that the team found a lot more interesting. And yeah, like, there is a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm not going to deny that. But yeah, it is really the personal relationship between these characters. And yeah, trying to understand what is the backstory between these two people. What does make Abigail tick? What is the happy ending that she goes into that scene hoping that she can achieve for herself by getting John to just run away with her, and then she can, save Elizabeth's life. Like, it just, it's just a real shame. And I am, for all of my, the problems that I did have with this production, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's the reason why this production didn't work for me, but it's definitely something that could have only helped if they had brought it back in there, or at least given us something more we could hang our hat onto.
Yeah, I mean, I had totally forgotten about the scene until you put out the questions and went, this scene was missing. I went, wait a minute. So I went back and read the script, and then I went back and watched it and I went, oh yeah, there is a scene that we're totally missing. And I'm like, yeah, and I do think that's why the Erin Doherty performance as Abigail is so different to me, is because that whole scene at the top of Act 2, where it is a very clear, sexually driven, lusting scene, is gone. It's like, well, now that's a very different Abigail that we have now without this scene. This scene is crucial to that part of her character. And so I didn't realize it was gone until you pointed it up. Then I went back and rewatched the whole play again and went, yeah, this isn't computing anymore. This scene, I don't know why. I tried going on Google to be like, is there an interview with the director where they said, like, we cut the scene because it was too sexual toward Abigail. We wanted to not sexualize her character, and that's how we cut it. And I'm like, but there's no interview that says that. So I guess we're maybe the first people to ask the question of, or at least publicly, of why was this scene cut? Cast, reach out to us. Let us know, like, what went on in that rehearsal room of why did this scene get cut? Because it is a very memorable scene. It was on the poster for Winona Ryder and Daniel Day-Lewis when they did it. And it's a very memorable scene once you remember it's in there. Of the top
it's
of that,
memorable once you remember it.
Hashtag memorable once you remember it.
Exactly. So again, I'm perplexed about why it was taken out. And I do think once you realize it's gone, you go, oh yeah, there's a major, part of this relationship that's just being excised out of the story that we kind of need to, get back in there again. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of wondering, as you both were voicing the question of, I wonder what decision was made.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that was it. If they thought that because they were sort of with the prologue, they were bringing a little bit more of a feminist lens to, like, in the sense of trying to understand the oppression of these women and why would they do what they did. Maybe they misguidedly thought that the sexualization of Abigail was part of the problem. And so removing that maybe throws more doubt into what really happened in this relationship. And she's not like a sexualized character. Like, I don't know if maybe that was part of it. Like, they made that choice in relation to what they were trying to do in the prologue. But if that is the case, I think that is such a mistake, because
I'm like,
what, like, no, because actually the way that men treat women, the way that men sexualize women and young women and treat them poorly is actually a feminist message if you do it the right way. So,
and also it then, if they did it for the reasons you're saying too, Sarah, it's equating, like, to be the right woman, you cannot be sexualized. And I'm like, this is my second swear word. Fuck that. Like, like, even today's day and age, like, speaking of female bodies in a sexual way, in a more raunchy way, even the words we use to describe it are still considered so dirty. And I'm like, can we change the narrative on that? We have just as much of an impulse as our male humans, because guess what? We're all humans, and like, it's interesting you brought that up, Sarah, because if that is why they did it, I'm like, that's like, a woman saying, oh, I voted for Trump because Hillary Clinton is a woman and a woman can't be in office. I'm like, no, honey. Like, we need to rethink the way that women are humans, and we have the same impulses and make the same mistakes as men. And again, it goes back to, like, the humanity of it. Like, the scene really shows the dirt and the muck and mire of humans, regardless of gender, like, it is genderized, but like, like, whew. Wow. Okay,
and then also, like, the conversation leads into the other thing we talked about in the prologue about, it shows Abigail getting a little power crazy of, look, I can say what I want in court and they're going to believe what I say. So I can easily get your wife out, but in return, you got to do this for me. So once again, it shows that the power of the office is kind of, really starting to, corrupt something that maybe was, once again, a lifeline at first to save herself, has now completely, between Act 1 and Act 2 is now completely, twisted it even further. So I think there's a lot of value to that scene. So once again, bigger questions now of why the heck was it taken out? Erin, Doherty, let us know. We want to hear from you.
Why were you robbed of this scene?
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe she wanted. Oh my gosh, that's the thing. If I was in this production and they're like, "Oh, we're actually cutting that scene," I'd be like, "Why?" Like,
totally.
Yeah. Okay, last question of the night, which is, here's a question most of us probably haven't thought about since high school. Why do you think Arthur Miller chose the title of The Crucible? Do you think it's the most fitting choice? If you were asked to come up with an alternative title for it, what would you suggest? Sarah, since you've been on both our Crucible panels, what do you think this?
And we were running out of questions to ask.
No, this is neat though.
So...
This is neat.
This feels like a fun Ryan, like, teacher, like, TA question. I'm like, interesting. This gives me some good conversation.
Sarah, take it away.
Yeah, I have no alternate solution. I actually, this is gonna sound crazy. I did not read this in high school. I know this play from theater school and whatever. So to me, The Crucible, this is gonna make me sound crazy, but I didn't know what that word meant. Like,
I didn't either.
Okay, I was like, I saw this question and I was like, maybe I need to, like, Google what this word means, because I was like, I don't actually really know why it's called that. Once I looked it up, I decided I really liked the title, because the definition that popped up very top of my Google search was a situation of severe trial or in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new, or a situation that forces people to change or make difficult decisions. So once I understood more clearly what the Crucible meant, I really like that. I think what I like about it is it could have been called the Salem witch trials, or like something really on the nose to the very specific historical elements of the piece. And I think what I liked about it was that it's addressing more of the larger theme, the larger situation. And that title makes it relevant to any time period, because any time in any people anywhere can go through a situation that forces them to change or make a difficult decision. So I like that the title is going to highlight kind of the heart of what this is, rather than just sort of the historical specifics or whatnot. Like the thing that came to mind for me was doubt.
Love doubt.
Like love doubt, and same idea with that title being about what is the heart of this versus like an on the nose specific title, I guess. So yeah, I had never thought about this before, but after being asked this question, I decided I am on the side of this title.
Nice.
Sarah, you just set up another great comeback episode for you. Doubt.
Yes.
I mean, Ron and I've already done our play review of Doubt. For those done here in Toronto, but who knows, Ron, it may be time to go back to the realm of Doubt again.
But yeah, maybe. I feel like our review of that stage version was almost kind of half a review of the movie too. But
kind of was.
Maybe we can. We'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk.
I like Doubt.
Yeah,
me too.
I do too. It's on Broadway right now with Amy Ryan and Liev Schreiber.
Oh,
yes. I saw that.
Sorry, Jill.
Anyways, Jill, go piggyback.
Because I felt the same way. Again, Sarah, we have to get together after this episode because our brains are on the same line. Okay, so literally, I did the exact same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, and I love titles of plays and like unpacking that, and also like why characters are named the way they are. Those are two things I love doing in a theater school. In essays, I'd be like, oh, give me a couple paragraphs. Let's unpack why things are named the way they're named. So yes, with the Crucible, I was like, I don't know what this is. I was like, I'm going to be the actor that's like, oh my gosh, okay, great. I'm going to go research what this is and know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I came to the same sort of conclusion as you, Sarah, of like, I think this is a wonderful sort of like catch-all, timeless, title for the piece. The one thing before I went down that, the thing that popped in my mind, and this might be artsy fartsy, and I know in the last Crucible episode, we did talk about several adaptations that were kind of made from this. So what I'm about to say, please someone tell me, Ryan, as our adaptation specialist, tell me if this is already a title. But a title I thought for this, and it kind of goes to my name and the sort of like impressions of like name, like the importance of names, Abby. And the reason I say Abby as opposed to Abigail. So I looked up Abigail, what that means. And it means father's joy. So again, I'm thinking father's like God, right? Like this joy, this element of, and joy can come through dancing, can come through being different and unique.
Dancing,
right?
Jill.
People are scared of joy in this play. So Abigail, joy. Now I say Abby because as sort of like going down like a brief lecture of like a nickname is something that's more, vulnerable. It's not everyone calls you that. I always say like, my name is Jillian Robinson, but when people get to know me, I'm Jill. Like it's just, it's more grounded. It's also the way that the girls refer to her. They call her Abby. And I also think, especially in this time period, like Abigail Williams is her name. She will be goody to whatever husband her thing is. But Abby gets to be hers. I feel like that's hers. And that's something that the girls acknowledge and say. And I'll dare to say, like, maybe when her and John are together, like, this is character work, but like maybe John calls her Abby behind closed doors, behind closed barn doors. But yeah, I just like, so then I looked up Abby means sweet refuge. So there, I think we're adding more layers as well, because sweet refuge and the definition of refuge, which we all know, but I'll just say it here, the state of being safe or sheltered from pursuit, danger, or difficulty. And I think that's something she's aspiring to get for herself and the other women and young girls around her. But I also think it's something that she offers that the men don't see. Like, and I think to talk more macro, like being safe or shelter, pursuit, danger, difficulty, like women have had to kind of like create communities to create that for themselves and have the capacity of, you know, bringing that on to others. And like, you know, I don't want to say like change the men, but like we have an offering that, you know, we can sort of, like bring us into the courtrooms, hear us out, hear our perspective. And you may not have to be men flittering around a court space being scared. Like, it's okay. So an offering of sweet refuge. So I offer Abby. Again, no one take this. If you take this, I will find you. And sweet refuge will be the opposite of what happens.
What you get. Yeah.
Jill, I would piggyback off you because I had a similar title to you. But first I would say, The Crucible, Arthur Miller, once again, a man of many words, heavy text, but he distilled the whole play down into a great title of The Crucible, because I also did not look it up properly until this
the only
question.
person who knew this word?
Well, I always pictured Crucible as like, you know, almost like the pestle where it's like in the kitchen where you're banging things together. Yeah, like a melting pot where it's like you're throwing people into a pot and it's like, let's see how these chemicals react, or let's see how these spices react to each other as we grind them into like this into dust, basically. So that's what I pictured about Crucible. I was like, oh, that's a cheeky title because we're throwing all these characters who are locked up together in a courtroom into one area, and we're gonna like, you know, see what's gonna happen to them when we light them up. So Arthur Miller, great title. Other titles, I had Stop It, Abby, right from the plate, because I was like, that's kind of it has a bit of a funny sitcom. Stop it, Abby.
But Abby.
Like, sorry, I just love that. Yeah. In the minute I wrote down, I was like, this sounds so sitcom-y, but I'm like, it's a line right out of the play, and Abby is the one that's driving this whole piece. So the whole thing of Stop It, Abby has so many ways into that title. And then the other one, once again, Jill, with the name thing, I just put either my name or just name, because after all, we know about the McCarthy trials, it was you have to name names, and Jerome Robbins famously did name names and was very much excised by the community because of his choice to do that. So it's like just either my name or names. And also the fact that this whole play is kicked off because the girls start naming names at the end of Act 1. So I was like, either names, my names, or Stop It, Abby. Were like my kind of like three contenders of like alternative titles that could be fun to play with. So that was
I picture people going to see your version, Mac, called Name, and they're walking to the theater. They're like, what is in a name? You know what I mean? Like, actually,
a rose by any other name.
A rose by any an Abby by any other name.
Yeah. Ryan.
I just picture also, sorry, like a song of like Stop It, Abby, like a musical version.
I mean, Oliver,
like Kiss Me Kate, Stop It, Abby.
Stop It, Abby. Well, I mean, like in Oliver, the musical Oliver, Bill Sykes' big song at the top of Act 2 that introduces him is My Name, and it's all about him singing about how his name, Bill Sykes, literally instills fear in everybody he comes across, and how he has profited and basically sold his soul off of his name, because he says, like, you know, like, what's bad, like, what's the point of turning, and how I'll be there burning. Meanwhile, think of what I'm burning, all on account of my name. So it's the power of a name says a lot. I mean, you know, one person's name can say a lot of things, or it's like, oh, don't say that name. I mean, I remember was watching one actor who played Javert in Les Mis, and he talked about how he was directed in the original London production, like basically saying Javert on stage had to be said as Javert. It's the devil coming out of your mouth. It is meant to send people screaming like cockroaches the minute you say that man's name. And Abigail's name in the courtroom is like Javert. It is meant to be a name that is meant to, holy shit, the devil cometh upon you. Like, naming a name is scary shit to do. So that's why I was like, name, my name, to Stop It, Abby. You all kind of fit in that bubble. Yeah,
Nice.
Ryan, take us home, though.
Okay, lots of thoughts. I had a lot of thoughts already, and now everything you're saying is stirring up others in my big melting pot. Where to begin?
In your crucible.
Yay. I want to start, Jill, because you posed the question to me as the man of adaptation. If anyone had done that title, one of the 3 feminist adaptations that I mentioned in the previous episode is called Abigail. I forget the name of the playwright on that one, so I do like that you are not.
Oh yeah, there is a new version about called Abigail. Yeah, we talked about it in the last episode.
So I also really like your idea. Take with the title Abby, not Abigail, because that would imply that it is this kind of completely different play. But doing the exact Crucible under the name Abby would completely recontextualize the original, as opposed to signifying to the audience that this is something different. And on the subject of Sweet Refuge, something that I don't think you mentioned, but I like a lot about the name Abbey, is that it's a religious institution. It is a home for nuns. A cloister of women who come together to serve God. So I think that is marvelous. I absolutely love that. Okay, so thank you for bringing all that up. And Stop It, Abby is just amazing. I love that name for a sitcom or improv parody show of the Crucible, kind of like a Pride and Prejudice sort of, or Bleak Expectations. I think Stop It, Abby is perfect for that, or even like a meta thing like Kiss Me, Kate. But I don't know if I like Stop It, Abby for like a serious production of the Crucible, but it's fun. I like it a lot. So I was familiar with the name Crucible, or what the word Crucible meant. Although, since I too, in preparation for this question, did the same thing all of you did in Google, just to make sure I was right in what I thought about this word, a couple things came to mind. And first thing is that I might be using this word wrong. Not wrong, because denotation and connotation are different things, but I've always thought, in addition to just being the trial that things go through and, put under great stress, I've always kind of had an understanding, maybe just in different contexts in which I've heard the word used, that an important part of the definition was that things come out better on the other side. And anytime I've ever used the word crucible, not in the context of this play, I've always reserved it for situations where it's a specific trial by fire, where some kind of good comes from it. And as a result, that's what makes something not just a terrible situation that puts people under stress, but what makes it a crucible in that regard. And if that's the case, if we are going with that type of definition, I don't know if I think it's actually very fitting to this play, because, and where I think part of that definition comes from is the idea of the melting cauldron of a crucible, that, you put various different metals in them and, get out their impurities and turn them into something more uniform that sort of works on its own right. But I think this play is more about the courtroom trying to be that kind of crucible, but failing to be that kind of crucible. Nobody comes out of this better on the other side. And I think that's interesting. And part of me kind of thinks maybe this is Miller's commentary on American history at this very early juncture of the colonial period, going through this crucible that it needed to get to the other side of to develop a theory of democracy, perhaps. Hard to say, but yeah, I don't know if I buy all that, though. And something that I will posit as an alternate title is something that I am very not clever for thinking of, because I didn't come up with it. Arthur Miller himself did, because what I will propose for our production of The Crucible is the original title that Arthur Miller considered, but then went with The Crucible instead. And that is, drumroll please, Those Familiar Spirits was the original title that Miller was contemplating for this play. And I like that so much more than I like The Crucible as a title, because I'm actually not even sure if it is a line itself that appears in the play. And I don't know if it's a literary allusion. I should have looked this up before coming on here. But I like Those Familiar Spirits because I think it does perfectly what the thing we're always talking about with this play. What this play does is it takes something from the past and makes it familiar to us now. Or if you think this political situation seems familiar, it's because we've been through this before, or other people have been through it before. The spirits from the past will haunt the proceedings of the present. It is pretty familiar. And I just think that it's a spooky sounding title. It gives very good Halloween vibes. it'd be pretty interesting to think you're seeing a new play called Those Familiar Spirits, and I guess this is just a production of the Crucible. That's kind of neat. And yeah, I like that play. I like that idea for a title to. I also like, of course, Abby sort of totally works for me. And when we do indeed get this team together and do our production, I would totally vouch for that one as well. But I don't know.
Be like Abby, Those Familiar Spirits.
Yes. Ooh, there we go. Compromise. But yes, I would have been remiss if in this discussion about the title of the Crucible, if I didn't bring up this title that I think is pretty neat.
There we go. All right.
Wow.
Arthur Miller's Estate, let us know which one we're allowed to change it to.
Oh,
yes.
Nice.
There we go. All right, my friends. I think that's where we will leave this for now. Also, fun fact today, I learned there is a French film adaptation from the 1950s of The Crucible. So who knows, we have to come back for another Crucible talk again. Well,
that's great.
Ryan, this will be like our new Fiddler on the Roof, where we just keep going back to The Crucible. Let's keep coming back to Salem, just like we kept going back to Anatevka till we ran that well dry.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
nice.
There we go, though. But before we go, Sarah, where can people find and follow you?
The best place to find me is on Instagram. I'm at heim.sarah.
Perfect. Wonderful. Jill?
Yes, also best place to find me is my artist Instagram account, which is jillian.robinson96.
Perfect. And Ryan, give us that classic Ryan Borochovitz send-off we all know and love.
No need trying to find or follow me personally because I'm not overly active on social media. But if you like me and my theater thoughts, you can send all that love to Cup of Hemlock Theatre, like Chip. It's at COH Theater on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube, where you might be watching this. Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast in the podcast places where you might be listening to this. Like, share, subscribe, do the stuff.
Love it. And you can follow me at Mackenzie Horner on all social media platforms. You can also follow my musical antics over at Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast. And you can check out Ryan and I's 3-hour-long live commentary of the film Fiddler on the Roof that we did last summer. So come on over, check that out. Ryan and I had a lot of fun doing that one. If you want some more Ryan and Mac on Anatevka content, if you haven't gotten
some more, you just brought it up at the end just so you could plug that. Admit it.
Yeah. See, Ryan, you gotta be cross-pollinating, you gotta be promoting things. That's why I said they have to go check out the last Crucible to find out if this was your favorite Arthur Miller play.
Well, we've alluded to the last episode enough that hopefully if you didn't watch it, maybe we said enough things that are interesting beyond just what Arthur Miller play does Ryan really like.
Yeah.
I gotta know.
Yeah. If you want more Arthur Miller conversations, we did do All My Sons with Sally Field and Bill Pullman.
Yes,
so you can check that out as well.
Also National Theater.
Yes, also National Theater. There we go. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you all in our next episode. Be safe, be healthy, and hang the witches!
And dance, because it's fun and joyous.